Hi guys, today I'm going to be talking about how Monty Jeffers became Monty Crew. And so I'll start off by saying that I grew up in Texas. My dad was Larry Jeffers and my mother was Gloria Jeffers. And we lived that way in Texas. We raised Arabian horses. We rode at the Mesquite Rodeo every weekend. I did pole bending and barrel racing and saddle horse riding and English riding and all these different things. And it was a great childhood. We lived on a big old place, and I went to school there in Mesquite, Texas, um, and my teachers called me Monty Jeffers, and I just never knew anything different. And so as things went along, I we moved. My parents split up, and then they came back together, and we lived in Ashland, Ohio, for a while. And I was born in Springfield, and so anyway, we went to school there. I was Monty Jeffers all the way through middle school, and then we moved to Springfield after my parents finally split up for good, and we went to Springfield, and same thing. High school there was Monty Jeffers. So anyway, so it comes down to where I decided to go to the driver's license bureau. I went through the classes in school and under Monty Jeffers. And so I asked my mother, I need my birth certificate so I can get it down and get my driver's license. She said, okay. She handed me an envelope that obviously had my birth certificate in it. So I went down to the DMV and I'm talking to the lady and I show her my school thing and where I went to driving school. And so she said, yes, yeah, sure. Let me have it here. And I started filling it out and I handed her, she asked for my birth certificate and I handed it to her. She opened the envelope up and started reading it. And she said, okay, well, we got a problem here. I was like, well, what's the problem? She goes, I don't know. She said, this says Monty Jeffers on all your records here and for your driving permit to get, for you to do that and everything. And I see you've taken the test and you passed it under Monty Jeffers. But my problem is your birth certificate says Monty Crew. I was like, what? She goes, have you ever seen your birth certificate? I said, no. So she handed it back across the counter to me and I start looking at it. It says Lindy Crew is my dad. I'm like, Lindy Crew? Who is this guy? I've never heard of him. And so she said, I can't help you. You're going to have to fix this. I was like, okay. So I go down. I didn't know what to do at this point. I didn't know whether to talk to my mother about it, call my dad about it, Larry Jeffers, or what to do. So I went to the nearest phone booth that had a telephone book, and I looked up the guy's name, Lindy Crew, right here. Okay, so he didn't live that far, so I got on my bicycle and I rode over to his house. I knocked on the door, and he answered the door, and I was like, he's like, can I help you? And I was like, yeah, I'm Monty Crew, so I'm your son. He said, well, I'll tell you what. I never liked your mother very much. I'm probably not going to like you very much. So best thing for you to do is just step off my porch and don't come back here. Oh, okay, cool. All right, so now I know who you are. So as things progressed, I went back and talked to my mother, and she said, yeah, I just never wanted to tell you, and blah, blah, blah. But this was bugging me, and so I ended up having to go to the school, go through a bunch of rigmarole to get me, I had to go take the driver's license test under Monty Crew and had to go and take other classes or whatever all under Monty Crew now. So I have to redo all this stuff. So as time went by, I still visited Larry Jeffers. Larry Jeffers paid child support for me until I was 18 years old. He visited with me. He's a amazing father, just amazing. I mean, I couldn't have opened a catalog and said, I need to find a dad and find anybody any better than this man was. He was just an amazing man. I understood he divorced my mother and she passed away, so I'm not going to say too much about that except for the fact that she was ornery, and he asked me after he left, are you upset about us breaking up? And I'm like, of course. I'm not mad because you left my mother, but I'm mad because you didn't take me with you. He said, well, I'm not your legal father, as you now know, so I couldn't, but I tried. And I also pay child support for you and what have you. So I never got the real story from anyone in my family, including my mother, my father, my family, and it just kind of turned me off from the whole family because nobody had ever told me this. Nobody had ever been straight with me and, you know, hey, you have a real father, or what the circumstances were behind that. So as I'm going through life in 30s, 40s, 50s, I never knew. I never knew what exactly conspired. So later on down the road, I figured out not too long ago that, so Larry Jeffers married my mother when I was a year old, and I guess they got the judge to um, make Larry Jeffers my legal father. They went back to my real father, or biological father, whatever you want to call him, and he signed off to, okay, yeah, he's not my kid. You can have him. I don't, you know, I'm not going to pay child support or whatever. That'll get me out of all this mess, and I won't have to take care of this kid. So Larry Jeffers signed the documents and everything before the judge, and I became Monty Jeffers. And until the divorce, when the divorce happened, then I guess I became Monty Crew again, just nobody said anything to the school or what have you. And but he agreed to go ahead and pay child support for me because he had agreed to raise me at that point. And I mean, he was a young guy when he married my mother. I think he was 20, 21. But I mean, just an awesome, awesome man. So that's as far as I could figure that out. I met when my oldest daughter was born. I went to the hospital, and we were there in the emergency room, and she worked there. And this lady worked there, and her name was Crew, and she saw my last name. I had to wear a little name tag, a little visitor pass, and it said Monty Crew, and she goes, is your dad Lindy Crew? And I was like, yeah. And she says, you know, I'm Reva, I'm your sister. I was like, what? I didn't even know I had brothers and sisters. Oh, yeah, you have plenty. So then the next day, I think it was, she introduced me to my brother, Lindy Crew Jr., and I'm in between Reva and Lindy Crew Jr., and their brother and sister, full-blooded. I guess he was with Reva's mom, then he went with my mom, then he's back with Reva's mom, so I got skipped out on. I'm not Lindy Crew Jr., I'm Monty Crew, so that's cool, I like my name. And so then later on, I found other brothers and sisters and cousins and uncles and people I didn't even know. And it was just a crazy, crazy mess. So when I going to Springfield, Ohio, was like that little country town that some people grew up in, and everybody knows everybody, and everybody's messing around with everybody, and everybody else knows about it. You know, it was party lines where you could pick up the phone, there's somebody else talking on there, so you'd have to hang up, wait for your turn and everything. And a lot of people I'd found out to unscrew the receiver, so, I mean the microphone, so nobody could hear them, and they'd just sit there and listen to everybody else's conversation, so they knew everything was going on in town. Yeah, I hated it there. I absolutely hated it. And then we went from living in a 14-room brick house where you couldn't hardly find your way around, and it was so huge that I would ride my tricycle around in the attic. You know, it was just a huge house. Larry Jeffers made very good money and took very good care of us. And so we went from there to low-income housing. Wasn't the projects, but just above it. And I met some lifetime friends there. Erica, Bill, Diane, lot of good people that I still, some I still stay in contact with and are good friends with. And then, but they had the, I just got so turned off from family there because I love my Uncle Carl to death. I love my Monty that I was named after, my Uncle Monty, and and Shirley and Ron. But I just got to the point where, and I hope you guys are watching this, I just got to the point where everybody was lying to me. Nobody ever told me the truth. The closest one that came to telling me the truth was my Uncle Monty. He was friends with Lindy, my real dad. He told me the hard times that this guy had had growing up, and it was very bad. His dad was killed, and his mother went nuts and ended up in the mental hospital for pretty much the rest of her life. I heard stories that she came over to our house when I was little, and she'd come in the house. She ended up taking off all of her clothes, running around the house naked, and trying to start fires with matches, and she's just out of it. So anyway, so I know he had a tough life and everything, and I don't hold it against him. I forgive him. I wasn't the best father to my oldest daughter. I ended up, I left Springfield because we had the blizzard of '78, and I was just like, this is not the place that I want to be. I grew up in Texas. It was a nice warm climate. I'd had enough of the snow up in Ashland because it's close to 60 miles south of Cleveland, and it's cold up there. And I said, I just can't, this is just not the life that I want. So I ended up moving to Florida. Some buddies of mine were going down there for spring break, and I'd already graduated, and they were going, take off, and I already got my graduation done, so I just took off and went to Florida. And I absolutely loved it. I've lived there. I lived there for 43 years. So I love the Philippines because it's much like Florida and gives me that same vibe as that I had in Florida, except for it's all Filipinos here. But the weather is beautiful. It can be hot and humid, but I worked building fences outside in the heat most of my life, so I'm used to that. But so anyway, the end of that became that my mother passed away at 75 from Alzheimer's, and the dad that raised me, Larry Jeffers, he also has Alzheimer's now, and I've tried to talk to him. He doesn't even know who I am, but was a great, great man. But that's how Monty Jeffers became Monty Crew, and I love the name. I think it's a catchy little name. I remember back in the 70s calling collect to my mother about something. I was down in Texas and she was up in Ohio. And the operator on the phone was a young guy. And I said, yeah, it's going to be collect from Monty Crew. And he goes, is this really Motley Crue, dude? And I was like, if it was, I wouldn't be calling collect. But yeah, so I've always got that nickname my whole life. I don't really like the band Motley Crue. That's not my music, but I like hard rock and all that stuff, but I just never cared for them. But I got the kick of the name from them. I almost named my business that at one point, but I found out I can get in trouble over that because that's their registered name. So I didn't do it, but I still have customers calling me off. Is that a play off of Motley Crue? And I'm like, no, it's just my name. But I enjoyed Monty Jeffers when I had it, but I like my name Monty Crew better. And I'll say Larry went on to marry another lady and had 2 children, a boy and a girl. And I think that made him happy. And he was just, even with them, I could visit and whatever. And she was cordial to me, and he was always a great dad. So can't say enough about the man. But so if you went through something like that in your life, say something down in the comments. I'd like to get to know, some of my subscribers better. And a lot of the subscribers have now become great friends of ours. And a little update, personal update for my subscribers and my close people, friends, is I file for my Social Security now. And went through phase 1 and phase 2, and I got one more little block there. I did it all online, so we'll see what happens, but I'm praying that goes through. So if that goes through, we just have to survive till November, and then I'll start getting that money and be okay. And I'm not getting any calls, of course, for business or anything through Google now because they shut that off, and then somebody else went in my business and turned it off in what's it called in Nextdoor. They said I didn't live there anymore since I'd moved to the Philippines, so that got cut off. Probably competition trying to get me out of there, but I have a young lady that is willing to do. That is a contractor, a fence contractor in Atlanta, is willing to do any jobs that I get calls for, but just no calls coming in at this time. So thanks for listening to me jabber on about my life. I'll try to include a couple photos of my childhood so you can see who Larry Jeffers was and Gloria was. But they were good parents, and I know both of them loved me, and we didn't always see eye to eye, especially me and my mother, but life goes on, you know, and she's gone now, so there's nothing to argue about anymore. So anyway, thanks again for watching. God bless. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you on the next video.